chickens do come home to roost. Somehow you think you can escape from reality, escape from history, escape from mortality. But sooner or later, that truth begins to haunt you. Truth crushed to earth shall rise again. And we know, in fact, that that U.S. Constitution needed some serious Socratic questioning and interrogations. Thank you, Frederick Douglass. Thank you, David Walker, an appeal to colored citizens of the world. Thank you, Maria Evans. And thank you, William Lloyd Garrison, for enacting that Socratic energy that allowed us to transform a pro-slavery document. It's very important to understand the U.S. Constitution in that way, even given all the wonderful aspects that it has alongside that pro-slavery stance. Part of the genius of the Founding Fathers was to acknowledge they were fallible, therefore they allowed for amendments. You end up with the 13th Amendment amending something not invoked in your Constitution. You end up abolishing an institution not even acknowledging your Constitution. It's a little embarrassing. It's true. It's true. But American slavery, already a form of terrorism. 9/11, nothing new for people of African descent, if you understand it in terms of terrorism as a form of individual, group, or state action that attempts to engage in the murdering or maiming of innocent people and attempts to render them so intimidated and scared that they walk around deferential to the powers that be. A lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, Brother West, I just can't get over this sense of thinking about terrorism all the time." I said, "You don't say." It's true. I was in New York 9/11. I was campaigning for Freddie Ferrer. It was election day that day. We'd been going at it for a whole week. And I saw that second plane crash. And I said to myself, more tears, innocent human beings, lives gone. Then I also said to myself, for the first time in the history of the country, all Americans now feel unsafe, unprotected, subject to random violence, and hated for who they are. I said, to be a nigger in America for the first 350 years, to be unsafe, unprotected, subject to random violence, and hated for who they are. Am I witnessing the niggerization of the nation? How will they respond? How will they wrestle? How will they grapple with this sense of feeling so unsafe, unprotected, subject to random and arbitrary violence, and thoroughly hated for who they are? My brothers and sisters walk up to me. I just can't get over this sense of being hated. So I say, ask Sister Letitia about it. She'll tell you. Ask Brother Jamal about it. He'll tell you. It's been the response of black folk in the age of terrorism that does not begin with 9/11. Begins when the first Africans stepped off that slave ship. As Du Bois has said over and over again in his text, already a form of war with collaboration of African chiefs and European elites coagulating in such a way to gain access to those bodies that put them on those ships to constitute that cargo that generates 52,400 voyages between 1444 and the last ones in Brazil, 1888. I'm talking about the hemisphere at this point. Fundamental pillar for the making of the Americas, the modern world, and lo and behold, one of the gifts of black folk in America and in other places of the hemisphere is to not just talk about, but to enact this Socratic energy with tremendous cost. And this, I want to stress this. I'm going to come back to this tomorrow when we talk about paideia, because there's a sense in which people often associate Socratic energy with just chit-chat, running at the mouth, trying to be clever and smart, and not recognizing that it's about life and death. It's about joy and sorrow. And when you talk about people of African descent being Socratic, they already had to reach the conclusion that they were willing to live and die for, ironically, democratic ideals. In the face of a society that describes itself as democratic but engaged in terroristic treatment of such folk. And that's just social death. You know, the fascinating story, 1855, Thomas Crawford was asked to design the Statue of Liberty, which now sits on the Capitol Dome in Washington, D.C. Some of you might know this story. It's a fascinating one. And he had designed the Statue of Liberty in such a way that he put the Liberty cap on the head of the figurine. And that Liberty cap was associated with the French Revolution. It was actually outlawed in Great Britain. The conservatives were very clever in terms of keeping track of some of the influences of various progressive activity. But when Jefferson Davis, who was then the Secretary of War, saw that cap of liberty, he said, no, you got to do away with that. Because in Rome, that was associated with emancipated slaves. And we do not want our slaves to think that the American ideals of democracy has anything to do with them. Now, of course, this is the same Jefferson Davis who would engage in, along with various comrades, in an organized violent insurrection to overthrow the U.S. government called the Confederacy. Look at that, and they replaced it with a feathered helmet. And you say, even at the architectural level, the hypocrisy's still there. The Socratic questioning and interrogation still being pushed to the margins. And of course, we need not go into the 620,000 lives lost, each life so precious on both sides, as a result of what? Wrestling with the vicious legacy of white supremacy and the ways in which it promoted the arrested development of precious American democracy.